for joining us for another episode of the Restoration Masterclass on M&A. So we've talked a lot about the different steps and what all of the buying and selling kind of looks like, but I want to take a journey through the overall selling process, kind of have you give sellers this overview, a broad view of what that looks like. So what does that look like from start to finish?
Yeah, great question, right? So it's a very complicated process from when you get an offer to when you go to close, right? And there's a lot of things you're signing up for, and you're signing on, okay, and you're agreeing to, all right? So you start with the letter of intent, okay, and those are just high brushstrokes of what the terms would look like. A buyer will present that to you. There's usually around 12 to 15 clauses in it, okay? But there's 3 or 4 clauses in there that you really got to be aware for: reps and warranties, terms, whether you have earnouts for, that you really got to know what you're looking for there, because you're agreeing to it.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Once you get through the letter of intent, okay, then you're going to go through a due diligence phase. And that, like I said, was about 60 days.
Yep.
And, in my previous video, we talked in detail about it. Yep. But again, it takes months to prepare for it. Usually they're going to ask you about 120 documents that you got to prepare. And you got CPAs on both sides going back and forth. And they're going to check out and make sure the business is what you advertised as for, right?
Yep.
Then as you're doing the due diligence, you're going to be hammering out the purchase agreement.
Yep.
Okay, so the purchase agreement, usually will have about 60, 62 clauses in it. Okay, most of them are pretty standard, but there's probably going to be about 4 to 5 clauses that really mean a lot to a seller on the risk. Okay, so you got to know what it is: your reps and warranties, what kind of insurance, how you're going to get paid off for an earnout, how is the EBITDA number calculated, how is working capital calculated. These are kind of like our top 5. Yep. So it really helps to have someone on your team that knows the lay of the land when it comes to what you're agreeing to on a purchase agreement. Once you get to the purchase agreement, you're going to now have to come up with a communications plan. So how do you talk to your key employees? Okay, how do you talk to the general employees? How are you going to announce it? Okay, how are we going to communicate the story? Why is this particular buyer really good for your business? Okay, how is it going to affect your employees? Because you want it to be positive. And then how are you going to communicate it to the TPAs? How are you going to communicate it to your customers? So these are the entire communication plans that we go. And we have a communications person on staff that help our clients do this. That's how important this is. Okay, so once we get through some of that, and we put a timetable in place, then we'll set up a closing date. Okay, and the closing call and the closing date takes about 5 minutes. You got attorneys on both sides who will just say, hey, I got all my documents, we're ready to close. And then the seller's attorney will say, hey, I got all the documents, we're ready to close. And then you go to close. It's very anticlimactical. But going from an LOI to a close, okay, is a lot of process. And do you know, in general, only 40% of companies go from an LOI to a close? So you got to know where the pitfalls are. You got to know what's around the corner. You got to be able to avoid it. And you just take it one step at a time. And the whole process, should take you somewhere about 4 months, okay, to go from an LOI to a close. So that's what you got. You got about a 4-month process.
So from the seller standpoint, are there any red flags that I know that you've talked about, that there's going to be a lot of preparation before the LOI is there, before you go into the due diligence and all of that, but what are some red flags that could come up that might hamper the process after you get the LOI and you're heading to close?
Yeah, great question, right? So when we go to conferences, everyone talks about multiples of companies. And to me, that's like an oversimplistic way of talking about outcomes on a deal. I mean, there are 62 clauses you're agreeing to, and price is one of them. You know what? So there's a lot of pitfalls that comes in there. I think risk. I think you need to understand risk. Okay, your reps, your warranties, what you're saying about your company. Are there any lawsuits out there? Those are the things that we look for in our client, because the price is the price. But how do you get the terms? That's where you get the peace of mind. Does that make sense? So you got the price and the terms. Okay, so a great price with not so great terms is ultimately a negative income for the client.
Sure.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, a good price with great terms is a better outcome for the clients. And that's what we need to talk about, is the terms of the contract. And to do that, you need a team. You need a team of professionals around you that can help you negotiate and look out for what they are and get you to the finish line.
Perfect. All right. Well, you just teed up several of our final episodes coming up. We're going to be talking about ownership transition, what that looks like, and we're going to be talking about using a broker or somebody outside the industry. So, Gokul, thank you. See you soon.